Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. The parent star of planet Earth holds a strange and special place in countless ancient traditions around the world. The celestial body identified as the sun in myth, religion, ancient astronomies, and rock art routinely bears no resemblance at all to our familiar sun. One of the most common ancient depictions of the sun is an orb or star within a crescent, an image with no modern natural referent. And numerous traditions depict the sun as a spectacular celestial wheel, with a warrior hero appearing as the axle of the wheel. For decades, comparative mythologist Eb Cochran, as well as his colleague David Talbot, have worked to reconstruct the natural events that produce these extraordinary mythical patterns. It is their conclusion that in the relatively recent past, in the era of prehistory, a period of instability reigned in the inner solar system, bringing planets within close proximity to Earth. In this episode, Ev begins our investigation into the question, did ancient man observe a different sun?
It is important to underscore the radical nature of our hypothesis. We hold that the solar system has only recently been subject to wholesale reordering, that in fact, well within the memory of mankind, a different sun prevailed. Our hypothesis is fundamentally a work of historical reconstruction based upon our mutual researches in comparative mythology and ancient religion. The research of Dave and myself is distinguished from other comparative mythologists in that we draw upon and emphasize the message of prehistoric rock art to illustrate our findings from literary traditions. To take but one example from hundreds that might be offered, ancient paintings and petroglyphs of the sun depict a wheel-like object, commonly 4 or 8-spoked in structure. Such artworks are global in nature. Yet how is this fact to be explained? From the conventional standpoint, such artworks are interpreted as abstract or metaphorical in nature. Miranda Green, for example, in her otherwise interesting book, The Sun Gods of Ancient Europe, concludes, the pictures do not describe reality. We beg to differ. It is our view that the prehistoric paintings accurately reflect the appearance of the ancient sky and offer compelling testimony with regards to an unfolding catastrophic celestial event in which nearby planets dominated the northern circumpolar heavens. The mere fact that analogous sun petroglyphs will be found around the globe supports this conclusion. At the same time, ancient myth offers corroborating testimony in this regard, wherein a different sun dominated the sky in former times and presented a wheel-like appearance. In this sense, as in countless other examples, the testimony of ancient myth and prehistoric rock art agrees at a level of detail that is impossible to explain by mere coincidence. In the Thunderbolts of the Gods, together with a number of other recent publications, Dave and myself have presented a wealth of evidence that the former sun was the focus of prodigious electrical activity and the source of spectacular outbursts of lightning, heaven-spanning storms, and aurora-like phenomenon. In ancient Mesopotamia, for example, the Sumerian word for sun is Ud. The same word is employed to write storm or thunder god, a startling extension of meaning. Sumerian hymns invoking the ancient sun god likewise describe it as a source of storms. So one hymn reads, the sun god thunders over the mountains like a storm. Another hymn reads, as my king, the sun god, comes forth, the heavens tremble before him and the earth shakes before him. Now I ask, does this sound like a realistic description of the modern experience of sunrise? In what sense is the sun's appearance over the eastern horizon ever accompanied by a shaking of heaven and earth or great bouts of lightning? What could the sun have to do with thunder and lightning? In the present solar system, of course, the answer is nothing at all. Yet the mere fact that other ancient languages preserve this very same semantic link between sun and lightning confirms the fundamental historical veracity of the Sumerian traditions and cries out for an explanation. Ancient Egypt, for example, offers corroborating testimony in this regard. In the pyramid text from the 3rd millennium BCE, The sun god's thunderbolt is specifically compared to the lightnings of the sun. The word in question here is mut, M-A-W-T, which has cognates denoting lightning in numerous other African languages. Significantly, however, the very same word is used to denote the spokes of a wheel. In the present world, of course, lightning has nothing whatsoever to do with the sun or wheels, hence the fundamental importance of such terminology for our historical reconstruction. But we need not rely simply on ancient language and myth alone. Mesopotamian cylinder seals, together with prehistoric rock art and other early artworks, likewise depict the sun with lightning-like structures emanating from its core. Students of comparative myth will recognize the structure adorning the face of the sun here as the thunderbolt wielded by the thunder god. So, for example, thunder gods like Zeus or the Semitic Adad are routinely depicted holding exactly this thunderbolt. Properly understood, the evidence from ancient language, like the testimony of prehistoric rock art, represents an enduring fossilized record of a different solar system, much as the discovery of a dinosaur bone harks back to its former age, one radically different from that which currently prevails. It must be remembered here that the denigration of myth is a relatively recent development, basically originating during the early decades of the 20th century. The science of comparative mythology, like the complementary science of comparative linguistics, grew out of the 19th century writings of world-class scholars such as Max Muller and Adalbert Kuhn, who rightly emphasized the prominent role of the sun and the thunder god in ancient myth and religion. Yet the excesses of these schools, together with that of the Pan-Babylonians, led to a general backlash against naturist or astronomical interpretations of myth and religion. Current models of myth, such as that advanced by George Dumézil, which dominates scholarship, emphasize linguistic connections above all else and are much more narrow-minded in scope. For example, Dumézil largely focuses on Indo-European myth. Most important, perhaps, is the fact that current models of myth always seek to understand the ancient traditions by reference to the present sky. But the ancient testimony is impossible to square with the present solar system. And as a result, scholars are left with empty slogans pointing to figurative language, metaphor, and such statements as that of Green, quoted earlier, to the effect that the pictures do not describe reality. As Dave and I have documented, however, granted the fact that the ancient traditions and prehistoric rock art complement each other, it therefore stands to reason that they do indeed describe historical reality. Confronted by these sun wheels, for example, on ancient rock art, the default position of so many modern scholars is just to ascribe those artworks to imagination or abstract forms, completely overlooking the fact that the same exact design is found all over the world. So at that point, you need to ask yourself a question. Were ancient skywatchers on every continent on the earth imagining the same fantastic structure in the sky, which in this case is just a cross on the face of the sun or a lightning bolt on the face of the sun? But we could cite 1,000 other structures that we could describe if we wanted to. We're just trying to focus the discussion on these particular structures at the moment. But are we supposed to imagine that all these skywatchers all around the globe were imagining the same thing? That is not a logically sound position. It's much more rational to assume that the ancient skywatchers were trying to describe their personal reality. They drew the picture of the sun that they saw, and that's why those pictures agree all around the world. Things that are imagined are not going to agree unanimously around the world. It's just that simple.